Imagine ourselves sitting by a quiet river at dusk. The gentle ripples reflect the golden hues of the setting sun, where there is no more haste, no more noise, only a steady breath and peace in every moment. The world often teaches us that being alone is something to be feared, a sign of isolation or abandonment. But have we ever wondered if solitude is not an empty void, but rather a gateway leading to a realm of tranquility? From the profound perspective of Buddhism, solitude does not equate to loneliness. Instead, it brings freedom, peace, and a meaningful journey of self-discovery. We often spend our entire lives seeking validation and fearing separation, yet true contentment actually blossoms from the relationship we have with our own soul. Old age is not a period of depleted social value, but a season of liberation, a sacred transition for the mind to rest in its most natural state. Let us begin the journey to discover why, as we grow older, being alone is precisely when we find the deepest essence of who we truly are. Lesson 1. Understanding the shift in priorities. As the years of life pass by, we will notice a natural shift in our own value system. Things that were once considered urgent, such as the need for socializing, social status, or non-stop interactions, begin to fade away. In our youth, we often sought friendships to define ourselves and to find a sense of belonging to a certain group. However, Buddhist teachings tell us that the self is but impermanent, and the identities we cling to are actually just constructs of the ego. At a certain point, the longing to belong to the crowd will give way to a different kind of desire, which is the yearning for peace. In our younger years, friendship often served as a mirror reflecting the image we wanted the world to see. We collected relationships like trophies with the belief that the more connections we had, the more complete we became. Yet, as we enter old age, a profound change occurs. We begin to question whether all that external noise is truly necessary. We realize that fulfillment does not come from the number of people surrounding us, but from how deeply we can sit in stillness with ourselves. Imagine the difference between forcing yourself to attend a boisterous party full of empty social pleasantries and enjoying a fresh morning quietly watching a flower slowly bloom. The urge to constantly interact or be noticed by others begins to soften. In its place, a quiet contentment gradually emerges. We are no longer caught up in the need to prove ourselves or fill every silence with pointless stories. Instead, we cherish solitude, breathing in the early morning air or feeling the weight of an old book in our hands. This is not loneliness. This is freedom. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from craving and clinging to transient things. Relationships, like all things, are impermanent. They change, fade, and transform over time. When we stop blindly grasping at connections, we allow ourselves to experience friendship more freely without expectation or attachment. This shift in priorities does not mean we stop caring about others, but rather that we choose to interact authentically instead of out of obligation. We become more selective, not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom. We understand that energy is finite, so instead of scattering it on meaningless encounters, we choose to invest it in what truly matters. Many may view this as isolation, but in reality, it is a deepening of awareness and the presence of the soul. When we are alone, we are not empty, but filled with our own richness. In that state, we discover a beautiful truth that we do not need the world's validation because we are already inherently whole. Lesson 2. The freedom of self-reliance. One of the greatest lessons of Buddhist philosophy is the spirit of self-reliance. Think back to the journey of the Buddha, who left behind his magnificent palace, his family, and all his wealth to embark on a solitary quest for liberation. He understood deeply that attachment is the very root of suffering. As we grow older, we begin to realize that much of our lives has been spent trying to please others, forcing ourselves into social molds and maintaining relationships sometimes purely out of obligation. But now, old age grants us a precious privilege, which is the permission to shed those heavy expectations. We no longer need to depend on external relationships to affirm our own value. Instead, we turn inward to nurture a sense of self-wholeness. Initially, the notion of self-reliance might make you feel uneasy. After decades of being surrounded by crowds, stepping back from social expectations feels like an unnatural shift. However, over time, a clear awareness will gradually blossom. Self-reliance is not coldness, nor is it about cutting all ties or rejecting companionship. In essence, it is freedom. It is the right to choose to interact when we truly want to, rather than out of compulsion. It is the right to prioritize inner peace over external approval. Recall the moments when you felt most at ease. Perhaps it was a quiet morning with only the sound of birds chirping outside your window, or an afternoon silently watching the waves lap against the shore. Those moments were peaceful, not because someone was there, but because that space allowed the stillness within you to speak. In previous years, we tirelessly sought fulfillment from the outside through recognition and relationships. But as time passes, we see that true contentment has actually always been lying within us. There is a profound satisfaction in knowing that we are enough, even when we are alone, without needing the world to confirm it. The beauty of self-reliance lies in how it helps us interact with others more authentically. Instead of maintaining friendships out of a fear of loneliness or a sense of lack, we connect out of genuine appreciation. With no more desperation or need to cling, we give without expecting anything in return, because we are already full from within. This transformation turns the fear of being solitary into the strength of independence. In that independence, we find our steadfast voice, a voice that knows exactly what we need to live a life of freedom and meaning. Lesson 3. Quality over quantity. The art of meaningful connection. Buddhism teaches that the nature of all relationships is impermanence. Friends come and go, some will fade over time, and others will become memories. Instead of mourning these losses, we should cherish them as precious pieces of our journey. As old age arrives, we realize a fundamental truth, that it is not the number of people in our lives that brings happiness, but the depth of the connections we share. One heartfelt conversation can hold more meaning than a lifetime of shallow social interactions. In Zen teachings, there is a saying, when drinking tea, just drink tea, which means whatever we do requires full presence. This is entirely true for relationships. Instead of scattering energy on too many people, we should focus our attention on the souls that truly nourish our being. Imagine yourself sitting with an old friend over a simple meal. There is no need for grand gestures, no pressure to impress, only pure presence for one another. In that moment, you realize that authentic connection does not lie in extravagance or frequency of meetings, but in sincerity. It is far from the feeling of loneliness in a room full of acquaintances where conversations only skim the surface, never touching the core of the soul. Youth may mislead us into thinking our self-worth lies in invitations or the number of friends, but old age gifts us the wisdom to choose consciously. This is not selfishness, but wisdom in protecting our own life energy. A vital part of this art of connection is deep listening. In the Buddhist tradition, listening is considered an act of love. When we listen without rushing to respond, without being preoccupied with preparing the next answer, we are respecting the presence of the other person absolutely. This practice transforms even the briefest encounters into something sacred and meaningful. We begin to see connection everywhere, from the smile of a stranger to the silent understanding between long-time soulmates. Remember that although all relationships are fleeting, The depth of interaction and the love we give are what remain. Ultimately, the measure of a life is not how many hands we have shaken, but how many hearts we have touched. Lesson 4. The beauty of solitude and reflection. Solitude is not a barren void, but a sanctuary of peace. In the Buddhist tradition, Zen masters often seek stillness not because they reject the world, but because they wish to understand life more deeply. Old age carries a similar principle. Instead of trying to fill every gap of time with pointless chatter, we can learn to embrace silence as a precious space for the soul to reflect. When we sit in solitude, we finally have the time to transform our past, accept what has gone by, and let go of remaining regrets. Within that stillness, an obvious truth will gradually reveal itself, which is that we are always complete even when we are alone. There is a common misconception where many people equate solitude with loneliness, but in reality, loneliness is the feeling of a lack of connection, while solitude is the full presence of the self. When we learn how to befriend ourselves, solitude becomes a gift instead of a burden. It grants us the wisdom to view life as a beautiful yet fleeting journey, where every moment is an opportunity to deepen our understanding. Look at history. From the Buddha attaining enlightenment under the Bodhi tree to great philosophers and poets, all found truth when returning to their inner world. Stillness is the fertile ground for creativity and breakthrough insights to sprout. Furthermore, solitude allows us the freedom to pursue pure joys such as writing, gardening, or simply observing our breath. These activities remind us that happiness does not require the presence of others to exist. Of course, loving solitude does not mean slamming the door on the world, but rather finding a perfect balance between connecting and retreating to our true essence. Every day, you can spend a few minutes just sitting still, doing nothing, only to listen to the silent voice within. When you feel comfortable with yourself, you will realize that you have never truly been alone because you always have the companionship of your own soul. Lesson 5. Family and community, where the light of wisdom radiates. Many people mistakenly believe that emphasizing solitude is promoting an isolated lifestyle, but in Buddhism, we always exist in mutual interdependence. As social friendships gradually recede, the roles of family and community begin to shine in a very unique way. At this stage, we are no longer those who tirelessly chase after fame and fortune, but instead become keepers of wisdom and spiritual pillars for the younger generation. Old age grants us the opportunity to act as lighthouses, passing down experiences and leaving behind precious moral values for our children and grandchildren. Family, whether by blood or through fellow spiritual practitioners, is the very soil where unconditional love blossoms. An afternoon spent telling stories to a grandchild, or offering gentle advice when the family faces storms, are spiritual gifts that carry immense weight. Through these acts, we see our own continuity, a persistent presence that transcends the limits of time. Furthermore, small communities such as a morning exercise group or a meditation hall bring warmth and meaning. These connections are not defined by the ambitions of our youth, but by sincerity and pure presence. In particular, practicing the virtue of generosity, dana, within these relationships is the key to contentment. Giving is not just about material things, but about offering our listening, compassion, and inner peace. When we give without expecting anything in return, the ego gradually dissolves, making way for boundless serenity. Consider every small daily interaction an opportunity to sow seeds of kindness. Ultimately, family and community are not just social relationships, but the places that preserve your spiritual legacy through the love and understanding you have diligently cultivated throughout your life. Lesson 6. Letting go of social expectations. The world around you often says that solitude is something to be feared and that withdrawing is a negative sign. However, Buddhism teaches us that suffering arises when we try to cling to the expectations of others. Old age is actually a precious opportunity for us to step out of the noise and begin living according to the values that our souls truly crave. For much of our lives, we are shaped by external pressures, from having to achieve accomplishments to how we behave within social circles. We tirelessly seek validation from the majority, only to finally realize that none of those things define our true nature. Letting go of social expectations means you are granting yourself the right to live most authentically. You no longer have the obligation to maintain friendships that drain you, nor do you need to force yourself into old molds of a vibrant social life. True peace does not lie in pleasing the crowd, but in respecting your inner voice. This transition is not a withdrawal from life, but rather participating in life on your own terms. It can start by choosing stillness instead of forced fun, or setting boundaries to protect your personal energy. Most importantly, it is about shedding the guilt when saying no to norms that are no longer suitable. Buddhism reminds us that when we attach our self-worth to external social activities, we inadvertently place our happiness in the hands of others. But when you can let go of those chains, you will open the door to a new kind of contentment, one rooted in self-acceptance and profound silence. Ultimately, the only measure of a person's life is not the number of invitations you accept, but the serenity in your soul when you live true to your own truth. Letting go is not loneliness, but absolute freedom. Lesson 7. Redefining connection in reality. We often mistakenly believe that connection must be grand gatherings or hours-long conversations, but in reality, the most authentic bonds lie in the smallest gestures. It is a warm smile given to a stranger on the street, the innocent laughter of a child echoing through a quiet afternoon, or the simple joy of receiving a caring message. These fleeting moments often carry much greater emotional weight than forced social interactions. In this era, technology has also become a gentle bridge helping us stay in touch without exhausting ourselves. A video call or a brief message is exactly how we maintain our presence while still preserving our own energy. Buddhism teaches us to embrace change and adapt without resistance. If the body slows down, we do not oppose it but gracefully move along with it. If the ability to travel far diminishes, we find fulfillment right within the space we inhabit. True connection does not require physical movement. It requires the presence of the soul. Instead of regretting what can no longer be done, ask yourself how to experience connection in a way that fits your current reality. Perhaps it is deepening existing relationships, or simply connecting with nature, feeling the rhythm of life through every breath of wind and the rustling of leaves. When we change our perspective, we will see that we have never been abandoned, because we are deeply participating in the flow of life right before our eyes. The core of Buddhist teachings reminds us that suffering arises from desire, from being preoccupied with yearning for what we do not have, and resisting the reality that is. But when we learn to sit with ourselves, fully embracing our own presence, we unlock an unshakable source of joy. This is the kind of happiness that does not depend on external conditions, a quiet light radiating from deep within. Old age, therefore, is never a loss but a great harvest. This is the journey back to the self, an opportunity to live the most complete and authentic life, no longer weighed down by the masks or expectations of the world. We have spent most of our lives molding ourselves to fit into social patterns, playing different roles, and maintaining relationships, sometimes just out of responsibility. But in solitude, those masks naturally fall away, leaving only the raw and pure truth of who we are. There is a sacred beauty in this process, as the silence that once made us fear now becomes a sanctuary. The stillness that was once considered empty now transforms into a space of infinite depth. In that solitude, we truly listen to the voice of silent wisdom that has always accompanied us for so long. Many fear that loving solitude means giving up on human connection, but the truth is quite the opposite. When we are at peace with ourselves, we interact with the world with sincerity instead of lack. Relationships become lighter, freer, and more meaningful because they are no longer burdened by dependency or expectation. We love others not because we lack love, but because the love within us is overflowing and wants to be shared. Finally, a great realization will dawn that we have never truly been alone. This universe is not separate from us. It moves within us through every breath. Walk this path with reverence and appreciation. Do not regret what is past. Smile at the present and engrave this mantra in your heart. I have arrived. I am home. I am wholeness.